Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. There's a kind of pain that doesn't announce itself. It just shows up one day wearing your favorite memories and slowly strangles them. That's exactly what happened to me. Not with shouting, not with cheating caught red-handed, but with a single sentence that felt like a bullet to the ribs. It happened at a birthday dinner. Not mine, hers. Tessa's friends had planned a surprise gathering at a downtown wine bar. The kind of place with overpriced appetizers and dim lighting that hides everything except truth. I wasn't supposed to be there yet. Her sister told me to come late so Tessa could have her moment. I agreed. Like always. I arrived 20 minutes early, carrying a gift I spent way too long wrapping. I didn't even go inside at first, just stood across the street, watching her through the giant glass window. She was radiant, smiling, giggling, head tilted back like she hadn't felt stress in months. And then a man leaned in close. Too close. They weren't touching, but that's the thing. Some distances are more intimate than contact. They whispered in that way people do when the world around them vanishes. And I was on the outside of that silence, watching my wife become someone else. I didn't plan to eavesdrop. Honestly, I just wanted to walk in, kiss her on the cheek, give her the gift, and pretend everything was fine. But then I opened the door. She didn't see me. The place was noisy, music humming low, laughter bouncing off the walls. I stood there, just steps away, when I heard her say it. I'd never choose him again. Never. No one flinched. No one corrected her. Not even her best friend, who helped me pick the engagement ring. They laughed, kept drinking. My gift was still in my hand, ribbon untouched, heartbeat unbearable. The crushed gift box was still in my lap, the ribbon coiled around my fingers like a noose. Across the street, the party carried on without me. I watched people laugh, toast, even take selfies with her, my wife, glowing at the center like a star I didn't recognize. There was no guilt on her face, no hesitation. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't angry. She was free, and I was clearly no longer part of that freedom. That night, I didn't drive home right away. I drove past it, past our neighborhood, past the coffee shop where we used to meet every Saturday morning, past the hospital where we had our daughter. Every familiar place looked strange now, like someone had repainted the world while I wasn't looking. Eventually, I pulled into a grocery store parking lot and just sat there in the dark, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror like I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't confront her. I didn't text. I didn't call. I knew that if I did, she would lie. Softly, skillfully, the way she always does when cornered. And I was so tired of being the one who asked questions only to be told I was overthinking. Dramatic. Insecure. I started believing her at some point, and that's the worst part. I let her convince me that my instincts were the problem, that my gut wasn't reliable, that I was just too much. When I finally came home, the lights were off. She'd beaten me back, which meant she hadn't stayed out long after I left. That hurt more than I expected. She'd stopped enjoying things with me months ago, barely made it through dinners, movie nights, even walks. But with them, with her friends and whoever that man was, she sparkled. She stayed late. She became someone exciting again. The silence in the house was unbearable. I walked into the kitchen and saw the note I'd written earlier in the day. Happy birthday, T. Can't wait to see your face tonight, read hard, still sitting on the counter where I left it. Unread. Ignored. I stood there in the dark, reading my own words like they were written by another man. A naive one. One who still believed in apologies and second chances. One who thought love meant staying, even when the other person has already emotionally left. I didn't sleep in our bed that night. I couldn't. She was already curled up under the blankets, her back to the door, like nothing happened. I could hear her soft breathing, peaceful, undisturbed, while I lay awake on the couch with the image of her whispering to another man echoing in my mind. I'd never choose him again. Never. She chose to say that on her birthday. On the night I tried to surprise her. On the night I still believed we had something worth saving. That wasn't just cruelty. That was clarity. And something in me shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. But I started making a plan, a quiet one. Because when someone shows you who they are, you don't ask for a second performance. You walk away before the curtain falls completely. The next morning felt like walking through a museum of a life I didn't belong in anymore. The kitchen smelled like coffee, the dishwasher was running, and sunlight spilled through the blinds as if the world hadn't shattered just 12 hours earlier. Tessa hummed to herself while scrolling through her phone, still in her robe. She smiled when she saw me, like nothing was off. Like the night before hadn't happened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her who he was, why she said what she said. But I didn't. I just nodded, poured myself a cup, and sat across from her like a stranger in his own house. She asked if I slept well. I said I had a headache. She offered Tylenol. I declined. The entire exchange felt like a script written by someone who never experienced real hurt. And then, without thinking, I asked, "So how was last night?" She looked up, briefly, then shrugged. "Fine. Girls were a little wild. You know how it gets." I nodded. She was lying. Easily, casually. My hands tightened around the coffee mug. She didn't even flinch. Later that day, while she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I would do. I went through her phone. I wish I could say I regretted it, but I didn't. When you feel like you're going insane, sometimes the only cure is proof. I knew her passcode. It hadn't changed in 5 years. I opened her messages and scrolled, heart thudding, until I saw a name I didn't recognize. Wes. There weren't dozens of texts. Just a few. But they said everything. Last night was dangerous, but worth it. He has no idea. Still thinks he's taking me out for my birthday. God, you make me feel like I'm 20 again. That last one hit the hardest. Because I'd spent the last 2 years wondering why she looked right through me. Now I knew. She didn't want comfort anymore. She wanted someone new. Someone not weighed down by responsibility, by routine, by me. I took screenshots. Not to confront her with. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want a scene. I just needed to know I wasn't crazy. That the pain had roots. That the silence between us hadn't been imagined. That the version of her I missed wasn't sleeping beside me anymore. That night, we watched a movie together. She cuddled up next to me and rested her head on my chest like we were still okay. And I let her. Not because I forgave her. Not because I was weak. But because I needed time. Time to figure out what leaving looks like when your whole identity has been built around staying. She doesn't know I saw the texts. She doesn't know I was at the bar. She doesn't know the version of me that believed in her died the night she laughed and said she'd never choose me again. But I know. And soon, she will too. 3 days passed. I kept my mouth shut. She acted normal, which somehow made it worse. Every morning she kissed my cheek. Every evening she asked about work, and every night she scrolled through her phone while sitting 3 feet away from me on the couch. We were playing house, and I was starting to realize she'd rehearsed the part of devoted wife long enough to perform it without effort. Meanwhile, I was cracking beneath the surface, one quiet fracture at a time. I'd memorized the texts. Not just the words, but the punctuation, the timestamps, the emojis. There was one message from Wes that haunted me more than the others. It said, "He's comfortable. Predictable. You're not meant to shrink yourself for someone else's version of love." And she replied with, "Exactly. I feel alive again with you." Alive. That word stung. As if life with me had been some kind of death sentence she'd barely survived. I started replaying every argument, every birthday, every moment when I thought we were okay. Had she always felt this way? Or did something change and she just never told me? Or worse, did she try and I simply didn't hear it? Then came our anniversary. 11 years. I had a small plan. Nothing huge. Just something sincere. A framed photo of us on our honeymoon. A dinner reservation at the same lakeside place where I proposed. And a card where I wrote, "If I could do it all over again, I'd still choose you." I left it on her pillow that morning before heading to work. She didn't text. Didn't call. By noon I knew. She forgot. At first, I tried to convince myself she hadn't. Maybe she had a surprise waiting. Maybe she wanted to celebrate later. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't a one-time slip. This was a pattern. She had stopped remembering us, because in her mind, we no longer existed. When I came home, she was already dressed to go out. Tight dress, high heels, perfume she hadn't worn in months. I asked, "You going somewhere?" She paused just a second too long. "Just meeting the girls. You know, midweek unwind. Want me to bring you something back?" I stared at her. Not at the dress. Not at her eyes. At the spot on her shoulder where she used to lean into me when we walked. It looked empty now. "You forgot what today is," I said quietly. She blinked. A half-second of confusion. Then realization hit, and she smiled. Forced, awkward. "Oh, wow. Is it the 23rd already? I've just been so busy." That was it. No apology. No, let me cancel my plans. No guilt. I nodded. "Go ahead. Have fun." She left. No kiss, no backward glance. I went upstairs, sat on the bed, and picked up the card I had written. I read my own words again, then slowly tore it in half. Then again, until there was nothing left but paper dust in my lap. That night I didn't eat. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't sleep. I started researching apartments. The next morning, she was cheerful. Too cheerful. The kind of forced lightness that only exists when someone is hiding a shadow. She asked if I wanted pancakes. I said no. She made them anyway, humming like the previous night didn't even happen, like our anniversary wasn't erased and replaced with lipstick and someone else's cologne. I sat across from her, sipping coffee while she scrolled through her phone. I could hear the tiny taps of her fingers flying across the screen. A few chuckles, one quiet gasp, then a smile. It wasn't for me. It hadn't been for a long time. I asked her casually, "How were the girls last night?" She didn't miss a beat. "Oh, good. Dana's thinking of starting her own business. Ashley's planning a trip to Spain. You know, usual stuff." Dana, the same friend who moved out of state. Who, as far as I knew, wasn't even in the city. I didn't call her out. Not yet. Instead, I just said, "Sounds like fun," and went upstairs, closing the door behind me before I could say something I'd regret. I sat on the edge of the bed, my chest tight, thinking about how lies, when they pile up quietly enough, start to rot everything around them. They don't explode. They don't scream. They decay. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Wes. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know how long it had been going on. But what I did know, what burned the most, was that she chose him on nights I was planning things for us. While I was arranging surprises, she was planning escapes. While I was holding on, she was letting go. So I followed the trail. Not in her phone this time. In real life. The next day, I told her I'd be working late. She barely looked up. Said, "Okay, be safe," like it didn't even register. I waited 2 blocks away, parked behind a church, and watched the clock. At 7:18 p.m., she left the house. I followed from a distance, trying not to be seen, my hands cold on the steering wheel. She didn't go to a bar or a friend's house. She went to an apartment complex across town, one I didn't recognize, pulled into a spot like she'd done it 100 times. And then he walked out. Wes, you know when you see someone and just know? His posture, his grin, the way he kissed her forehead like it belonged to him. That was all I needed. She walked in with him, hand in his back pocket like a teenager. And I sat there, in the dark, in my car, watching the woman I married disappear into someone else's home. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt this numb, hollow relief. Because now I knew. No more guessing. No more hoping. No more defending her to myself. She had chosen. Not by accident. Not once. But over and over, in silence, in shadows, behind soft smiles and empty promises. And I was done watching. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove until the city lights gave way to darkness, until the roads got quieter and the air felt less like it was pressing against my chest. I stopped at an old rest stop near the state line and sat there in my car, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I didn't look like myself anymore. Or maybe I did. Maybe this was who I'd always been. The man who stayed too long. The man who loved past the point of return. The man who made excuses for someone who had already left him in every way except physically. She was still at his apartment when I got back. I knew she would be. I walked into the house like a ghost, moving through the silence of the kitchen, the living room, the hallway. I stopped at our bedroom door and looked inside. Our bed, still made. My side untouched. The card I wrote her weeks ago still sitting in the drawer, unread, unopened. I didn't sleep that night. I started packing instead. Slowly, quietly, one drawer at a time. I didn't take everything, just the essentials. A few clothes. My old journals. The broken watch my dad gave me before he passed. I left the framed wedding photo on the nightstand. I wanted her to see it. I wanted her to walk in and notice what was missing. Not the things, but the presence. The weight of someone who used to fill the space. The next morning, she came home at 8:07 a.m. She looked tired. Not guilty, just tired. She didn't even notice the half-empty closet. She poured herself coffee, muttered something about an early meeting, and disappeared into the bathroom. I stood in the doorway, holding my duffel bag, watching the woman I used to adore rinse off the scent of another man. She didn't even look at me as I said, "I'm heading out of town for a few days." She just nodded. "Okay." Let me know when you're back. That was it. No questions. No kiss goodbye. No why. And that told me everything I needed to know. She didn't care if I left. Because in her mind, I already had. I drove straight to a short-term rental I'd booked a few hours earlier. Small place. Sparse furniture. But it was quiet. And for the first time in months, I could breathe. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I waited. On the second day, she sent one message. Hey, should I water the plant in your office? Not where are you? Not are you okay? Not come home. Just the plant. I stared at the screen, rereading her words, and realized something so painful, so sharp. She was already living a life that didn't include me. I was just background noise, a forgotten part of the house. But not for long, because I wasn't just packing bags anymore. I was gathering proof. And I had one more thing to do before I disappeared for good. I returned home 4 days later, not because I missed her, but because I needed her to believe, just for one more moment, that I was still the same man she left behind. I walked through the front door, placed my bag in the hallway like I'd just come back from a work trip, and called out her name. She was upstairs, folding laundry. She didn't even look surprised to see me. Just said, "Hey, you're back," as if I hadn't vanished for nearly a week. No hug. No questions. No mention of the silence. I pretended it didn't hurt. I told her we should do dinner, just the two of us. Let's reset, I said. Talk. Clear the air. She agreed, barely lifting her eyes from the shirt she was folding. Sure, she mumbled. Friday. That gave me 3 days. I spent them carefully. I printed the messages. All of them. The ones from Wes, the ones she deleted. I had them backed up in the cloud, but I wanted the paper. There's something about holding betrayal in your hands that makes it harder to deny. I found the apartment lease in her email, signed just 2 weeks ago. Not in her name, of course. It was under someone named Laurel. But the emergency contact was W. Campbell. Her phone still buzzed constantly. She didn't bother hiding it anymore. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The puzzle was already complete. Friday night, I cooked. Her favorite, grilled salmon, asparagus, garlic mashed potatoes. I even bought the wine we drank on our honeymoon, the one she used to call dangerous in the best way. She got home late, claimed traffic. I said nothing. She changed into a soft sweater and jeans like it was any other night. We sat down across from each other, the dining table between us suddenly feeling like a canyon. I poured the wine, raised my glass, and smiled. She clinked hers to mine. To fresh starts, she said. I didn't drink. Instead, I reached under the table and pulled out a manila folder. I placed it beside her plate. Her smile faltered. What's this? She asked, already sensing something wasn't right. Just a few things I thought you might want to see, I said. She opened it. One by one, she pulled out the screenshots. The lease. A photo I'd taken from my car of her walking into Wes's apartment. I watched her face change, not in an explosion, not in denial, but in slow-motion regret. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes darted across the table and then back to the page in her hand. You went through my stuff? She said, voice cracking slightly. I was looking for my wife, I answered. Turns out she doesn't live here anymore. She sat back, swallowed hard, and for once, she didn't have a response ready. No rehearsed lie. No half-hearted apology. Just silence. The kind that feels heavy, like something just died in the room, and both of you know it. I'm not going to yell, I told her. I'm not going to beg. I just want you to remember this dinner. Because it's the last one we'll ever share. I stood up, grabbed my keys, left the house without looking back. She didn't follow. She didn't even call my name. That was the moment I realized I hadn't lost her. She had lost me. Quietly. Fully. And for good. I didn't crash at a friend's place. I didn't go to a hotel. I went back to that small apartment. The one bedroom with creaky floors and a view of nothing. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night. No pretending, no tension in my chest, no wondering who she was texting. Just peace. Empty, yes, but peaceful. She didn't call. Not once. No follow-up. No apology. And I didn't reach out either. We both knew this wasn't a fight. It was a funeral. Quiet and overdue. And maybe the saddest part was how easy it was to end. Over the next few weeks, I started breathing like a real person again. I made my own schedule. Ate what I wanted. Read books I'd forgotten about. I got a haircut. I donated clothes that reminded me of the version of me that was always trying too hard to keep someone who didn't want to stay. I even found myself smiling, once in the grocery store parking lot, for no reason at all. It hit me that I hadn't done that in years. Just smiled because the sun was warm and nobody was lying to me. Then, one Saturday morning, I got a text from an old friend, Elliot. We hadn't talked in a while. He invited me to a community volunteer event, said they needed help organizing books at the library downtown. I went, just to get out of the apartment. That's where I met June. She wasn't flashy. She didn't flirt. She handed me a box of paperbacks and said, "You look like someone who used to love stories and forgot why." And somehow, that cracked something open in me. We ended up shelving books side by side for 3 hours. We talked about music, about being let down, about the dumbest things we'd stayed too long for. She didn't pry, didn't try to fix me. She just listened. And it felt like the first honest conversation I'd had in years. We've seen each other 3 times since then. It's not a love story yet, and maybe that's the point. Right now, it's just light, uncomplicated, real. And I'm not who I was. I'm not the man hiding behind a plant, listening to the woman he loves choose someone else. I'm the man who finally chose himself. If you've ever let go of something that was silently destroying you and found something better waiting on the other side, drop it in the comments. What moment from Elwood's story hit you the hardest? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more true, raw, and unforgettable stories right here on Reddit Confessions.